Hello and welcome. I'm Sharon Epperson, Senior Personal Finance Correspondent at CNBC, and I am delighted to join you today to moderate the first Connecting to Reimagine webinar of 2023 by the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center at the George Washington University. Now, we're always talking about how people should save for retirement, how they think about retirement, and it's always just been a number, trying to build a nest egg, trying to save a certain times your salary, a multiple of your salary to make sure that you'll have enough money for retirement. But very important to the plan is to ensure that you have enough money to last your lifetime throughout your retirement. And just last week, TIAA Institute and GFLEC released a new report examining what could help individuals better prepare for their retirement. And this is what we're going to discuss today. I am delighted to be joined by Surya Kolluri, head of the TIAA Institute, and Anna Maria Lusardi, university professor at the George Washington University and founder and academic director of this amazing Global Financial Excellency Center. Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, though there is a lot of excellency in what they do. Anna Maria, I want to start with you because, and we've talked about this for over many years in my reporting and my interviewing of you about what the most important things are to planning for retirement, and financial literacy is key. But you came up with some really interesting findings and highlights in this report. Can you share some of them?
Absolutely, and so excited to be here with you today to talk about our new report. Over time, when we started this project, the TIAA Institute GFLEC Personal Finance Index, we had in mind how to better prepare people for retirement, because this is so important, as you have mentioned. And one of the characteristics, one of the information we started to collect right away was information about financial literacy, how much people know about many of the important topics that are connected to planning for retirement, to retirement readiness, including how much people understand, for example, inflation, speaking of an important topic, how much people understand interest compounding, how much people understand the type of instruments that, for example, employer offers for that. And 6 years of data now that we have collected clearly indicate, first of all, that there is a very strong link of financial literacy with retirement readiness, and those who have higher financial literacy are much better able to plan and to be ready for retirement. But also, unfortunately, that financial literacy is very low in the US. And so, many do not have the skills and knowledge necessary to prepare for their retirement. In this new data we have collected in 2022, we are also looking at an additional, and we thought, important piece of information. But do people know how long they are going to live? In particular, what's the average longevity, so that they have an idea about, how much they have to prepare, how many years they have to prepare for their retirement. And this is, in a sense, what we would like to discuss today. Do people know, and does that knowledge matter?
Yeah, it seems like it must matter a lot, but you brought up a term and you stressed this term in the report called longevity literacy. And Surya, can you explain exactly what that is and why that is so important when it comes to financial planning and retirement planning and financial literacy?
Sharon, thank you so much. Indeed, it's a delight to be with you and Anna to have this very important conversation. So thank you for having us on. So longevity literacy, let's break it down and perhaps put it in simple terms. So we can think of it as understanding. So longevity literacy being understanding how long people tend to live upon reaching retirement age, and therefore how long people tend to live in retirement. So let's keep that in mind as I go through my next few thoughts on this question Sharon asked me. So this kind of understanding would be, it seems to me, particularly important in the context of planning and preparing for these retirement years. So it matters for how much it needs to be saved. I think this is what you said in the opening, and accumulated. It matters for managing and spending those savings in that decumulation period. So we could argue that longevity literacy enables and promotes such planning and savings behaviors and thoughts. But I feel like, based on the research that Anna's team and our team has done, that this is an unrecognized issue. And really, we appreciate your help in shining a light on this topic. And as you've said, most people have never even heard of this term, longevity literacy, before, let alone incorporating it into a conversation within the family and with financial advisors too. So when I think about this, I think the great value in this research, Sharon, is, and why we're so excited about this, is putting longevity literacy on the radar in conversations about promoting the topic of retirement savings and also retirement income security, for peace of mind. So the last thing I want to say in answer to this question is, as Anna was just saying, this research for the first time examines longevity literacy among US adults, as well as the connection, I think, between this longevity literacy topic and retirement readiness.
Before I bring Anna in, I wanted to ask you one more question, Surya, because there may be some people watching who realize that the people in their workforce or themselves, they're not thinking about how long they're going to live. They're thinking about how they're going to be able to survive paycheck to paycheck or life event to life event. And the life event of end of life is so far away, they're assuming, that why am I thinking about this? How do I figure it out? And then I have to be frank, was the reaction of some of my colleagues when I did this story. They're like, yeah, right, I'm going to be able to figure that out, my life expectancy. How do you do that? But you can. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools and how to think about it? Maybe not as retirement money, but something else.
Yeah. So Sharon, the conversation you were referring to, I was greatly enamored by, because the thing I took away from it was the passion engendered in that conversation. The moment you brought up longevity, because it suddenly becomes personal. It's not just some esoteric topic like inflation or catch-up contribution. It's like you're talking about my life and how long I'm going to live. So one way, Sharon, I wonder if you would agree with me, and Anna too, that we could frame this conversation, particularly with the incoming class who are coming into the workforce, is to talk about longevity bonus. So what I mean by that, Sharon, is from the time Social Security was introduced in the 40s to today, we have been steadily adding years to kind of overall lifespan, speaking in the aggregate. So the question then becomes, you could ask it this way. So if you've been afforded a longevity bonus compared to your grandparents' time, do you want to take that longevity bonus and stick it at the end of your life? Or do you want to take that bonus and spread it throughout? And if you do, how much you want to invest for it? I think might be a framing, Sharon, that might work.
I think that's a great framing, and it's also really important framing when you're talking then about some of the key findings in this study, Anna, because you've been looking at the impact on financial literacy from so many different angles over the years, and now looking at life expectancy and the impact on financial literacy and financial planning. I found some of the results really fascinating. Anna, can you share some of the findings?
Yeah, and the first thing I want to do, I want to make sure, we explain what we have asked, So we have asked a question for which there are official statistics. So it's really information that, you could potentially easily access, even though, as I want to echo what Surya said, that, we need to put the statistics probably more readily available, because we ask people, what is the life expectancy among 60 years old, and we distinguish men and women in the US, because of course we know that that's different. And we ask people not to give that precise number, but we list a set of options. And what we do is, we list the fact that, the life expectancy of somebody, of a man at age 60 is now about 22 years. So you live up to 82 years if you are a man, and you live up to 85 years if you are a woman. But what we also list is an underestimate and an overestimate to have a sense whether people, they are overshooting or undershooting. And the difference is 6 years, long enough that it makes a difference if you miss it by that target. And we allow people to say, I do not know. So that people are not choosing at random and we get information. And here is the first number I really want to highlight when we look at the findings, which is only 37% of Americans actually know the longevity, the life expectancy of a 60-year-old American. So only 37% know these very, very important statistics, which we think is at the basis of the planning, right? If you're planning for retirement, you should know, in a sense, more or less, not precisely, but have an idea of how long the retirement is going to last. The second number we want to highlight is that 53% basically do not have an idea, because what they do, they either told us do not know, and as many as 28%, told us they do not know, their longevity. So they cannot even assess it. They couldn't even choose, among our list. And a good also 25% actually underestimated. So when you look at the people who do not know, or the people who underestimated, which we think is, more problematic than overestimating it, and the data also tells us that the people who overestimate or the people who get it right behave similarly, but then 53% basically, do not have the right information about their longevity, which is really, I think, such an important piece of information as we go to retirement readiness. And the other important statistics is about the difference in the population. We make the question difference between men and women, and we found actually striking differences between men and women. And I'll turn to Surya to illustrate some of these other findings as well.
Anna and Sharon, thank you. And that 37% number, Anna, really striking. But I have to say, when Anna's team and my team looked at the data and the results, Sharon, we had to take a double take on the difference between financial literacy and longevity literacy. And this is worth spending a little bit of time on. So let me walk us through this. So let's contrast financial literacy and longevity literacy. So financial literacy among women, we have found tends to lag that of men. And unfortunately, this has been a consistent finding, for the half a dozen years of the PFIN index, as Anna was describing in the beginning. But what we found was women are more likely to demonstrate stronger longevity literacy. So what does the data show in this study? 43% of women correctly answered the longevity literacy question that Anna was mentioning, compared to 32% of men. So that is 11 percentage point difference, Sharon. And so let's get to why that might be the case. So
because we take care of everything, Surya. That's why.
That is the truth.
That's why.
That is the truth. So furthermore, this difference is accounted for by the larger share of men who underestimate life expectancy 60, which, by the way, as a male, that kind of concerns me that we would underestimate like that. So as you correctly pointed out, Sharon, what's a possible explanation of this difference? Could be that, there's who's within a household, who's spearheading financial decisions and who is spearheading healthcare decisions, who is thinking about caregiving, who is thinking about long-term care. So I think there's, further research might help us dig us deeper into this, but intuitively, as you pointed out, I think if you think about the household and who's taking care of healthcare decisions, this answer, this response to this research, I think begins to make sense.
I think it's very interesting, people who have commented on the story that I wrote about this study were saying things like, well, many people think that they're just going to work into their 70s anyway. And so if they don't understand what their life expectancy could be on average, they think they're going to work till 70, then that will require them to be very healthy. And that is not always the case. You think you may be able to work till 70, but physically, mentally, your capabilities may not be such, and the job market may not be such that you're able to do so. So I definitely understand why this matters so much. But Anna, tell me a little bit more about what the data shows that you came up with in this report and why it's so important to understand this.
What we found, and I think that's very important, is that longevity literacy matters and matters a lot. And we have looked at people before retirement and looking at indicator of what they are doing to prepare for retirement, for example, for planning for retirement, for saving regularly for retirement and things like this. And we found this very strong connection between longevity literacy and preparing for retirement. And we also found this very important finding as well, that it is people who are right, but also people who overestimate to behave similarly. It's those instead who do not know or underestimate that are much less likely, in a sense, to have the behavior that are consistent with the retirement readiness. So really to show that, that knowledge, expecting to live long has that implication to what you do for your own retirement. And this time we have a very large sample, so we could look at people who have already retired. And for those that, in a sense, had a better sense of their longevity literacy, we also see that they're doing much better after retirement. They feel that they are also having the type of retirement that they expected. So, yet again, this is knowledge that is important. I always say when it comes to finance, ignorance is not bliss. And yet again, we have found that, I know it looks like a suggestions for the, football coach, but, I love the phrase that retirement is good for those who have prepared for it. And sometimes, the preparation doesn't require really a lot, but it does require to do a little bit each time. And I have to say, I'm starting to teach personal finance. We have 3 courses here at GW, and I start today. And one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to report this data, but I also think for a young person, it's even more, it gives them, the perspective of what they want to do, right? The fact that you live so long might also mean that, you might want to invest more, for example, in education. Might also mean that you might expect in your lifetime, certainly very different jobs, but also because maybe close to retirement, you shift in doing something else, given that, by the way, we're talking about the life expectancy of a 60 years old today, so it's going to be a longer life for them. So I think there are implications for a young person, even beyond retirement readiness. There are implications about, what are you doing, and what will you be doing in this long life? What a blessing to live a long life, but, how do you plan for it?
Yeah, I know, Anna, we've talked in the past about the importance of planning what you want to do in quote unquote retirement, because many in our generations prior to ours, they have a career and a job that lasts the good part of their adult life. And now many young people may have a dozen or more jobs over their course of their adulthood in their lifetime. And part of that may be because they are able to work longer. But that can only happen, again, if they're taking care of their lives holistically, right? Their health as well as their financial situation. And you found in the study, I think, that those people who understood more about how long they could live, that in day-to-day life, they were better able to meet their financial obligations, right?
Yes, exactly. It's not just the long term. And this, I'm so glad you are also bringing the attention to that. People who have this type of knowledge, which also means, there are people that probably are more likely to go and collect information overall, are also better at, their day-to-day making the hands meet. So it's not just more security in the long term, it's also doing better in the short term. And this is, again, another suggestion and another characteristics and finding I want to highlight to my student as well, that, that type of information, being informed, being literate, help us in making many of the decisions that make us be more financially secure overall, today and tomorrow.
Yeah. And so, Surya, when a financial advisor is speaking with a client, having this information about life expectancy, sharing this information about life expectancy can also contribute to overall planning, not only your investments, but perhaps also career planning to then have the earned income to make the investments. Because as you age, your interests and your ability to do certain tasks may change also. So I'm wondering, when you're having a conversation with a financial advisor, how important is it to have to discuss life expectancy and to make sure you understand that as you're trying to come up with an appropriate plan for investing?
No, Sharon, this is such a great question. And thank you, by the way, just earlier on, expanding the definition to holistic. I think there could not be a more powerful word than that. And I'll kind of introduce it in the context of the financial advisor conversation. So first, a quick stat that just to emphasize what Anna just said and what you were pointing out, which is what we found in the study is 81% of folks who had high longevity literacy saved for retirement, compared to 57% with lower levels of literacy. So already there's an action connection, which kind of addresses your question about if we can equip the advisor with that knowledge, they're going to bring this topic up. And the other thing I quickly wanted to add on the holistic point is, I'd love to think of health and wealth as two sides of the same coin. And so maybe we can visualize, Sharon, a triangle. I'm thinking, financial wellness on one side of the triangle, physical wellness on this side of the triangle, so that's health and wealth. But I have a base, and the base might be socialization, fitness. Because I worry as we live longer and get older, the work structures, the PTA, parent-teacher association meetings, all these fall off. And how do you build up your social connections, which could also have an impact on your cognitive health? So I think, to your point about holistic, if you can visualize this triangle, we can invest in all three areas: the financial area, the physical area, and the social area. And then coming full circle to your question about, hey, what can the conversation between an advisor and a client look like? I think, first of all, having, if there's a joint household, having both spouses at the meeting might be valuable to cover all three angles, legs of the triangle, number one. Number two, we could be thinking about, and I think you articulated this nicely in the story that you wrote, that there are three things we should keep in mind as we think about finances in retirement. One is, okay, what's the social security I can expect and optimize between the spouses? And secondly, can we plan for a lifetime income that sits on top of Social Security? So if you add Social Security and lifetime income, is it taking care of my expected expenses through my life? And then on top of that, you could still have some investment strategies that kind of, understand how the market's going to work and build up your assets over a longer period of time. But I think you might need all three, and working with the advisor on both the holistic and this income layering might be a very productive conversation. I imagine you would agree.
I definitely agree. And what I find very interesting, I know that people, you can go to the Social Security Administration, they will tell you what your expected life expectancy will be, what they estimate it will be based on your age today. But some may say, I have this physical issue that I'm dealing with, a chronic illness or what have you. Is that really right? Or my parents died young. Does that have an impact? And there are a lot of life expectancy calculators out there. And I took a quiz myself because I'm a nerd. I love quizzes. I'm a professor. I love giving them. So it was fascinating to me how many questions in determining my life expectancy on this particular calculator had to do with stress, had to do with how I work, the physicality of work or not, and also, so very important, how many new friendships have I created in the last year, the last 2 years, the last 5 years? And I'm thinking, how many friendships I created have to do with my life expectancy? But obviously that social wellness is something that's very important to your overall longevity, your overall life expectancy. So it's really important to incorporate all of those. I will say, to your second point, though, in terms of the three layers for income, there are, because of what has happened and been reported in the media over the years, there is some concern about having a guaranteed lifetime income stream that may be an annuity. That may be annuity in your 401k plan. But these are developments that are happening in the industry that I think many companies are trying to explain to their workforce, and many workers are trying to figure out, does this make sense for me? So what is your sense about how maybe this lifetime income stream has changed and what people should know about it?
Yeah, a very important question. Let's acknowledge the past and let's acknowledge all the difficulties one has had with this, talking about the solution. But I think, like we are having in this conversation, if we started with the need first and solution next, and express to people, employers to employees and advisors to clients, et cetera, that, hey, how are we planning for this longer life? And how might we ensure finances are adequate for you to kind of fulfill the goals that you might have in your life? I think in that context, ensuring that one has income, I think begins to play well, including considerations like long-term care, et cetera. And then Sharon, could I add just one more item to your considerations around, you used the calculator and it took into account all these things. I think there's one more. That is one spouse outliving the other, right? So it's not like, if you had an average of 85 for female and 82 for male, that magically somebody gets to the average and then passes away. So really what we should be thinking about is, what is the probability that one spouse outlives the other? And then what does the household want to do in terms of exposing the spouse to longevity risk? And how do they ensure financial security? I think that can come through lifetime income. So I think that's the framing, the new framing for this conversation.
Very important, very important. Anna, you're about to teach a class to who I assume are young 20-year-old students, maybe even in their late teens, about longevity literacy. How is that going to go over? How are you going to get them to understand that this is important for them and it needs to be on their radar?
I'm going to follow the suggestions of Surya, and this is normally what I do in the class, which try to understand the need, try to understand how people approach this problem. And I think the way I will describe it is, if you look at your life today, what is different with respect to the past is you are going to face a very long life, and this is a trove of opportunities. Therefore, you can do so much, and to do well, you have to plan for it. And to achieve what you like, right, you have to have the skills and knowledge to be able to understand better the world around you. And I'm going to suggest eventually that there are three important investments to make. One investment is in basic financial literacy, because we need that today. It's like the equivalent, I would say, of reading and writing. You need to have that type of knowledge, to participate to society. The second investment is in education, because you are going to live a long life, you need a lot of skills to do that. And so, to me, this really does require probably, it might be necessary to go beyond sometime college, and you can do this at different stages in life. And of course, to grow your wealth, you have also to invest in the financial markets, and this is going to be an important part of the course. But I'm also going to add that they need to invest also in relationships, in friends, in having a good network. The data and the study shows that that's also a very important investment. And it's because of the word you have used before, which is, we have to look at this holistically. And, our well-being is composed of being financially secure, but also having a support around us that make us feel valued, that make us feel connected. And so these are all things we need to invest on, because perhaps they don't come, they don't come naturally. And that's the importance of planning. A retirement is good for those who have prepared for it.
Yeah. And Anna, you're going to have a range of students from those that are first generation in their family to come to college, to those whose parents may be alums and legacy students. So there's a full gamut, and there's also a full gamut probably of their financial situation for themselves and at home. I'm wondering how this longevity conversation can add to the family conversation that many families don't have about their money.
And that's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to have this course. Because if we leave it to young people to learn by themselves, we are going to end up in the equilibrium that you have described, which is that, some people are going to learn about finance at the dinner table, and they are going to learn quite sophisticated concepts. For example, I don't want to say how to price bonds, but they are going to learn how to invest in the stock market. They are going to learn that, you need to contribute to a 401k. You need to take advantage of all of these tax favor assets. And some other people are going to instead, learn very little, or they might actually just learn perhaps even what is not, the cheaper way to do finance, which is, borrowing maybe at high cost method of borrowing. So, the first thing I normally do, and I do three things. One is try to understand how they perceive money. And what I always do is in this class, we are going to talk about money. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions about this. And, and we want to make this conversation as simple as possible. Yeah. Money really matters, is very important. And I always describe my own story about money as well. So, hopefully this will become a conversation where every situation is respected and where we really go into some of those details. And I also Absolutely. Have to tell you that another quick question I ask is what they think this course is about. And almost all of the students think that the course is about investment, is about investing in the stock market. And I told them this course is a happiness project.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I want to go back to, the beginning here, Anna, with you. We're getting a lot of questions from people who are watching, and I thank you for submitting your questions. Please continue to do so because I want to get to all of them. But this person is asking, let's go to the beginning. Could you please just describe and explain how the personal financial index is developed to get to these findings?
Absolutely. So we started, by the way, this project, as I mentioned, in 2016. And what we have done is try to design an index of personal finance knowledge. And this is why it is called the PFIN index data, because a very large part of the data collection is in measuring financial literacy. And we use as many as 28 questions, divided into 8 topics. What are the topics? Are the topics that, are part of what we think is the national standard, basically, for financial literacy. So we ask questions that range from saving to consuming, to investing, to insuring, to go to sources of information. And we have a website dedicated to that. Is on our www.gflec.org website. So, I want people also to be able to access that information. We have questions, basically 3 to 4 questions for each topic. And then we sum up the answer to all of these 28 questions. So it's very granular information. Now we can be detailed about, what is it that people know the most and the least, because we have as many as 8 topics. And we can also look at how that knowledge has evolved over time. We are measuring what we think is working knowledge. So we are really measuring the type of information that people need to be able to operate in the market. So we are measuring, do you know the effect of inflation? Do you know, if you start to save early, you will have more. And so, comparing to people, one start early, one start later, do you know that, the one who starts later is going to have less. So this is what we really do with the personal finance index.
Gotcha. Surya, I wanted to ask you the next question. This person is asking, what are some of the channels for reaching people with the important messages you are articulating and getting them to care?
This is such a great question, because really tree falls in the forest And do people hear this? And all of us collectively thinking about all these channels, Sharon, is going to be very important. So let's lay out a few. One, I think, is at the place of employment, right? So can employers engage in a conversation around lifetime planning with employees? And I would submit it needs to be life stage specific. So if somebody has just joined the workforce, they're probably thinking about, hey, how do I pay off my college debt? I mean, that's looming. Or if somebody becomes a new parent, maybe they're thinking about buying a home, et cetera, et cetera. So, but toward all this, we can lace in a conversation around how do you take care of today and also prepare for tomorrow. So that's one channel. A second channel that Anna so elegantly described with her pioneering course, getting to students, and even before they join the workforce. So that's kind of a second area. A third area is the great work, Sharon, that you're doing to get to the broader public. And talk about this in a non-technical, in a way that is engaging and get people to think about these conversations. But can I also add two more channels? One is community. So, we all are, either as volunteers or otherwise participating in, various charitable activities and thinking about those communities that we serve and public policy officials thinking about this, about the broader society is going to be important. And then finally, researchers themselves, right? So we have initiated this dialogue. How do we further this research? How do we substantiate it? How do we give it more depth and nuance and different lenses? I think, Sharon, if you would agree, those are all the different ways in which you should get this message out for a broader conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another person is asking, Anna, what are the policy implications for these findings? And I guess I would add, what are the policy differences or changes that have been made as a result of findings that you've done from other years looking at financial literacy? Because there are changes. More states are adding it as a prerequisite to high school graduation. And a lot of your work, I'm sure, is what is going into the fuel that they need to get state legislators to understand the importance of financial literacy and financial education. So what are the policy implications, Anna, for your findings?
I'm so glad about these questions. So clearly one of the implications is we need to have better information. We need to increase the level of financial literacy. And by doing that, you also increase indirectly longevity, because people who are more literate are more likely to then, collect information or be aware of the importance of collecting more information. And this is why, I think, policymakers, I think, have a very important role in, making access much more readily available. And I wanted to say we need to start early. I almost would argue as soon as the tooth fairy comes. So maybe, like we need it not just in high school, but in elementary school already. Some of these concepts are very important. And by the way, children socialize, with money early on. And it's not that we need to talk about retirement, but we need to talk about the importance of knowing about, the financial literacy. And we have seen over time that more and more states are mandating financial literacy in school, which I think is important if you want that wide access. That the word mandate looks a bad word, but how do we guarantee that also, people with low income, low education family have really access to these complex financial information? I also think that, for example, Social Security can play a very important role here in informing really well the Americans, and this can have a lot of implication even when people withdraw their Social Security, at what age, which is such a critically important decision. And if I look at the financial industry, we have seen over time that they are so much more proactive, and the programs that they are designing are so much more articulate. This is really what we are also, advocating with our research that, you know, you really need to do more than one retirement seminar or sending people to a benefit fair. You know, you need to do programs that empower people to take better advantage, by the way, of the benefits that it is offered. So, and also just quickly, I think we also need to help women focus on the women in particular, because we know that they are more aware of their longevity, which is good, but they are also less financially literate, which might mean they don't have potentially the skills or all the knowledge required to take care of themselves and the fact that they live longer. So I would say, you know, we need programs targeted to women, and we need to provide that help to women because we also know that there is a higher proportion of women in poverty at retirement, and this is something we really want to avoid.
Very good point. Very good point. This is an interesting question as well. Given cultural differences where other family members provide support during one's life, especially later in life, are there strategies for incorporating more than just a spouse or partner in the conversation, Anna?
This is a fantastic decision. This is a fantastic question. You know, we have always mentioned that, you know, when it comes to retirement planning, you need to have, you know, the spouses in the room. But more and more, I think, you know, perhaps we need to have the whole family in the room, you know, and I would say even the children in the room, or potentially also the parents, so that, you know, we are all together because, you know, often there are so many intergenerational, in a sense, connections, right? And it is not just that we take care of children, but because of the higher longevity, we are also much more likely today to take care of parents. And it might just be not just financial support, but it might be that time support, that friendship, that company support that we need to provide to parents later on. And so I think, you know, bringing the entire extended family into the conversation can be really important. So, you know, we can all better prepare for, you know, living the life we would like to do. For, you know, our happiness is related not just to our own financial decisions, but also to the financial decision of our family, our loved one. To do so, they need to be involved in this conversation. Finance really matters.
Absolutely, absolutely. Surya, I think this brings up a good point for what financial advisors should be doing and looking for, and how attentive they need to be to clients who may have cultural differences from their own. You know, we talked about the importance of having a couple in the conversation, but what if it is a same-sex couples where they're not given the same, in certain states, the same ability to share resources or to build resources or to decumulate resources together? And what about someone who's culturally, again, taking care of parents is what you're supposed to do. So you have to know what your parents have as you're planning for how you're going to accumulate and build and grow your money. How do you have those conversations, and how do you ensure that the financial advisor community is inclusive enough to understand that these are the kind of conversations that you need to have, and not assume that the person that you're speaking to will eventually get married, will eventually have children? Because there are many who may come to you that are single and may be single for life, or that are unexpectedly single. And that also brings a very important consideration when you're talking about life expectancy and your longevity risk.
Sharon, this is such a deep question, right? So let me introduce a term, and also maybe, you know, talk about a technique for our advisors in having these conversations. And the term, Sharon, might be family bank. So in other words, if I'm thinking about a family member who might have a healthcare need and they ask us for support, what am I going to say? I'm going to say, well, let me step up and help you. And that stepping up and helping the broader family might be stronger and on a spectrum based on the culture we are from. So an advisor recognizing that would be very important. And of course, if the family bank is a significant chunk of money, is that in the plan? Is something very important to think about. And then the point that Anna made around intergenerational, particularly with advisors, if you have spent 2, 3, 4 decades with a client, and the client is getting ready to bring their children into the family business or bring their children into the estate concerns, etc., does the advisor have a connection with the family? What is the structure of the advisor's practice to be able to have this productive intergenerational conversation. So I think starting with a life journey conversation supported by a financial conversation might be an effective way to open the door, having an open conversation about these cultural nuances, and then say, rather than a template, say, how can we make your money work for you in your culture, in your circumstances, in your particular set of needs? I think inverting, starting with life journey first and having finances supported might be one effective way in which advisors and clients can have this conversation.
Very good point. Very good point. I wanted to ask one more question of you, Anna. This person is asking, does the research study include minority groups who have wealth gaps because of history of injustice? Does financial literacy education narrow the wealth gap among these groups?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. Our research is very comprehensive, and we pay a lot of attention to minorities, in particular African Americans, and we have dedicated, by the way, an entire report to studying that. And our data shows that financial literacy is one component, one important determinant, for example, of trying to reduce the wealth gap. So, there are, of course, many policy, and we don't want to argue that the other policy are not important. I think, this is such an important findings, and, this wealth inequality is so striking. But our research shows that, one potential way to also contribute to diminishing the wealth gap is about financial literacy. And this is why we are so passionate about this. This is why we have a course here. And, this course is very much targeting also to the student, the first generation students who for the first time might be dealing about this topic. And I think, empowering people is one way, not the only way, but certainly one way in which we can contribute to make our society more equal, more inclusive, in which we can guarantee, I think, financial security for all.
Absolutely, absolutely true. We are out of time. I could talk about this topic for a very long time because, as Surya mentioned, it's very personal to each one of us, our longevity, our life expectancy, and how we plan for that financially to make sure that we are able to enjoy a longevity bonus, our retirement, whatever you want to call it. Make sure that we have enough money for our financial future, that our clients, that our workforce, and that the people that we care about in our lives also have enough for their lifetime. Connecting to reimagine. It's important to continue to do that. And I believe GFLEC and TIAA will be continuing to work together to help all of us figure this out with their research and with their commentary about how better to reimagine our retirement future. My name is Sharon Epperson. I want to thank very much Anna Maria Lusardi from the George Washington University, as well as Surya Kalluri from the TIAA Institute for joining me today for this very impactful conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I urge you to continue to ask yourself, how can I reimagine my retirement? Thank you.